welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates, March 15th, 2025, 3:47 p.m.
Threat 147.
Something's seriously wrong with Atlanta's emergency alert system, and I'm not talking about your typical tech glitch. I'm typing this from the back of a Starbucks on Peachtree, hands still shaking from what I witnessed at today's city council meeting. It started at 2:15 p.m., right in the middle of Councilwoman Rodriguez's budget presentation. My phone buzzed, that harsh, panic-inducing emergency alert tone that makes your stomach drop. You know the one. The message flashed across my screen. Emergency alert. Atlanta Emergency Management. Immediate evacuation required. Chemical spill detected. Downtown corridor. Seek shelter immediately. Avoid Peachtree St between 5th and 10th. Standard stuff, right? Except 30 seconds later, my phone screamed again. Different message, same urgency. Emergency alert. Atlanta Fire Department. Gas leak emergency. Evacuate Midtown area immediately. Hazardous conditions. Peachtree 8th to 14th. I looked around the council chamber. Half the room was staring at their phones with that deer-in-headlights expression we all get when authority tells us to panic. But here's the thing, people weren't all looking at the same messages. The woman next to me showed her husband her screen, and I caught a glimpse. Hers read something about a terrorist threat in the same area I'd gotten chemical spill warnings for. That's when the third alert hit. Emergency alert. Atlanta Police Department. Active shooter situation. Shelter in place downtown. Do not approach Peachtree corridor. 3 different agencies. 3 different emergencies. Same 10-block radius. Same timestamp. I've been covering Atlanta city politics for 6 years, and I've never seen anything like this. The emergency management protocols are strict. One lead agency coordinates all alerts to prevent exactly this kind of confusion. Yet here I was, watching a room full of people receive contradictory evacuation orders like some kind of bureaucratic fever dream. The council meeting dissolved into chaos. People were grabbing coats, checking phones, calling family members. Councilwoman Rodriguez tried to restore order, but her voice was drowned out by the symphony of alert tones echoing through the chamber. Every few minutes, someone's phone would shriek with a new variation of imminent doom. I did what any responsible journalist would do. I followed the story outside. The streets told a different tale entirely. Peachtree Street, allegedly ground zero for chemical spills, gas leaks, and active shooters, bustled with normal Tuesday afternoon traffic. Food trucks served lunch to office workers. Construction crews operated normally. Pedestrians walked casually past the very blocks that had just been declared a hazardous disaster zone. I approached a hot dog vendor at the corner of Peachtree and 8th, right in the supposed danger zone. "Excuse me, have you gotten any emergency alerts about evacuating this area?" He looked at me like I'd asked him about UFOs. "Emergency alerts? Lady, I've been here since 11 a.m. Only emergency I've seen is running out of mustard." That's when I started documenting everything. Screenshots of alerts, photos of the eerily normal street scenes, timestamps of contradictory messages. The pattern became clear. The alerts weren't just wrong, they were impossibly systematically wrong. At 3:15 p.m., I got a call from Dr. Thea Marsh at the CDC. I'd interviewed her last year for a piece on pandemic preparedness, and she'd been a reliable source for health-related emergency procedures. "Ren, I saw your posts about the alerts," she said, her voice carrying that careful tone officials use when they're about to not quite lie to you. I wanted to reach out before you went too far down this rabbit hole. Thea, what's going on? 3 different agencies are claiming 3 different disasters in the same location, and there's zero evidence of any actual emergency. Pause. Emergency alert systems are complex. Sometimes there are test scenarios that can accidentally push to civilian devices. Test scenarios that specifically target demographic groups, because I've been talking to people and the alerts aren't random. College students got terrorist warnings. Families with young children got chemical spill notices. Senior citizens got shelter-in-place orders. Another pause, longer this time. I think you should be very careful about the conclusions you're drawing, Ren, and maybe consider that some things are above both our pay grades. The line went dead. I spent the next hour walking the supposed disaster zone, interviewing anyone willing to talk. The results were unsettling. Not only had people received different alerts for the same location, but the alerts seemed tailored to push specific behavioral responses. Parents with children were told to evacuate immediately, triggering panic. Young professionals received shelter-in-place orders, encouraging compliance. Elderly residents got medical emergency warnings, inspiring caution. As I'm writing this, my phone has received 14 separate emergency alerts in the past 3 hours. Chemical spills, gas leaks, terrorist threats, medical emergencies, structural collapses, and something called a biohazard event that supposedly requires immediate digital check-in for contact tracing. The overlapping alert tones have become a constant soundtrack to my afternoon, each one slightly different in pitch and rhythm, creating an acoustic fingerprint that makes my skin crawl. It's like the city's emergency system has developed its own twisted language, speaking in frequencies of fear. But here's what really keeps me awake tonight. I just checked my location services, and according to my phone's GPS data, I'm simultaneously inside 14 different evacuation zones and outside 13 different safe areas. The geometric impossibility of my location, according to these alerts, suggests something far more sophisticated than system glitches. Someone is using Atlanta's emergency alert system to run experiments on its citizens, and I'm going to find out who. Update 4:23 p.m. Just received another alert. This one knows my name. Emergency alert. Atlanta Emergency Coordination. Attention Ren Holloway. Unauthorized investigation detected. Report to nearest compliance station. Non-compliance will result in elevated threat classification. I'm turning off my phone now. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow, start asking questions about those alerts you've been ignoring. Thread continues below. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 127. Posted via mobile location services disabled. Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates March 16, 2025, 9:12 a.m.
Thread 2, 47.
I didn't sleep last night, not because of fear, though that personalized alert still makes my hands shake, but because I spent 12 hours trying to trace the source of these impossible emergency messages. What I found defies everything I thought I knew about how communication systems work. Let me start with the obvious question. If Atlanta's emergency management system is malfunctioning, where are the official denials? Where are the press releases explaining the technical difficulties? Where are the apologies for the mass confusion? There aren't any, because officially, according to every government database I can access, yesterday's alerts never happened. I called Atlanta Emergency Management at 7 a.m. The duty officer, a woman named Patricia who sounded like she'd been fielding calls all night, insisted their systems showed no alerts issued after March 10th. When I read her the exact text of my chemical spill warning, she put me on hold for 15 minutes before coming back with a prepared statement about possible third-party spoofing. Ma'am, we're aware of fraudulent emergency alerts circulating on social media. Citizens should verify all emergency information through official channels. What official channels? I asked. Your website shows no alerts. Your Twitter is silent. The mayor's office has no emergency declarations. I'm sorry, but I can't discuss ongoing investigations into security breaches. Security breaches. That was the first official acknowledgement that something was actually wrong. Next, I tried APD. Detective Jasper Lane, a contact I'd cultivated during my coverage of the police budget hearings, agreed to meet me for coffee. Jasper's one of those cops who thinks every conspiracy theory is a personal affront to his worldview, which usually makes him a reliable reality check. "Ren, you're chasing shadows," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with the methodical patience of someone who's had this conversation before. "Look, I get calls every week about fake emergency alerts. Kids with hacking skills, foreign actors trying to cause panic, domestic terrorists testing system vulnerabilities. It's not a mystery, it's crime. Jasper, these weren't pranks. The targeting was too sophisticated. Someone compiled demographic data on hundreds of people and crafted personalized psychological triggers." He leaned back, giving me that look cops reserve for people who think the government is run by lizard people. Or maybe you're seeing patterns that aren't there. You know what they call that in psychology? Apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections in random information. "What about the alert that used my name?" "Screenshot," I showed him. He studied it for a long moment, his expression shifting from dismissive to concerned. This is different," he admitted. "The format matches legitimate emergency protocols. The threat classification language is accurate. But I've never seen an alert target a specific individual. Can you trace it?" "I can try. But Ren," he leaned forward, his voice dropping, "if this is what I think it is, if someone's using emergency systems to target journalists, you need to be very careful about how loudly you shout about it." That conversation left me more unsettled than reassured. If even the cops were nervous about these alerts, what did that say about who was behind them? My next call was to Beckett Ray, an IT security analyst I'd met at a digital privacy conference last year. If anyone could decode the technical fingerprints of these messages, it would be him. We met at a hackerspace in Little 5 Points, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of circuit boards and cable management disasters. "Show me everything," he said, pulling up terminal windows on 3 different monitors. "Alert text, timestamps, metadata, delivery method. I want it all." For 2 hours, Beckett dissected my phone's emergency alert logs with the focused intensity of a surgeon. What he found made my blood run cold. "These aren't coming through the official emergency alert system," he explained, pointing to lines of code that meant nothing to me but clearly horrified him. "They're using the same protocols, the same authentication signatures, but they're bypassing the federal relay stations entirely." "Meaning what?" "Meaning someone has built a parallel emergency alert system that can masquerade as the real thing. The alerts appear legitimate because they are legitimate. They're just not coming from the government agencies they claim to represent." "How is that possible?" "Advanced persistent threat. Someone with serious resources, state-level resources, has compromised the authentication infrastructure. They can issue alerts that look official, target specific demographic groups, even personalize messages based on individual data profiles." Beckett's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up network analysis tools I'd never seen before. "Look at this metadata. Each alert contains embedded tracking pixels, device fingerprinting algorithms, and behavioral analysis triggers. This isn't just fake emergency management. It's real-time psychological profiling disguised as public safety. Who has that kind of capability? Governments, intelligence agencies, maybe high-end private contractors working for, well, governments and intelligence agencies." The room felt suddenly smaller. "Beckett, you're talking about surveillance. I'm talking about weaponized communication systems. Someone is using fake emergencies to map social networks, test behavioral responses, and refine psychological manipulation techniques. And they're using Atlanta as their laboratory." As if summoned by our conversation, both our phones erupted in alert tones. Different pitches, different rhythms, but unmistakably coordinated. The overlapping frequencies created a dissonant harmony that made my teeth ache. My alert read, "Emergency alert, health depth, / infectious disease outbreak detected / report recent contacts for contact tracing / compliance mandatory." Beckett's was different. Emergency alert, Atlanta cybersecurity / unauthorized data access detected / terminate investigation activities / report to digital compliance office. We stared at each other across the electronics cluttered table. The implications were staggering. Not only were the alerts personalized, but they demonstrated real-time awareness of our activities. Someone was monitoring our investigation and responding with targeted psychological pressure. "They know we're talking," Beckett whispered, his usual confidence replaced by something approaching panic. "They know what we're doing right now." I tried calling Dr. Thea Marsh again, but my call went straight to voicemail. Her message was different from yesterday, formal, distant, like she was reading from a script. "This is Dr. Marsh. I'm currently unavailable for media inquiries. Please direct all questions through official CDC channels." That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the day's findings. The pattern was becoming clear, but not in any way that brought comfort. Someone had built a sophisticated system for psychological manipulation disguised as emergency management. They were testing it on Atlanta residents, refining their techniques and preparing for what? As I write this, I've received 17 alerts since yesterday, each one more personally targeted than the last. They know where I live, where I work, who I talk to, what I investigate. The alert tones have evolved to no longer random cacophony, but carefully orchestrated psychological conditioning. Different frequencies for different demographic groups, different behavioral objectives. The most unsettling part? I'm starting to recognize the patterns. My nervous system is learning to distinguish between alert types before I even read them. Evacuation alerts sound different from shelter-in-place orders. Medical emergencies have different acoustic signatures than security threats. They're training us, all of us, using sound conditioning to create automatic behavioral responses to their fake emergencies. But I found something else tonight, something that changes everything. In the metadata Beckett pulled, buried in the technical specifications, was a timestamp that doesn't match when I received the alerts. It matches when I started asking questions about them. The system isn't just monitoring our responses to fake emergencies. It's monitoring our responses to the investigation itself. Update 11:47 p.m. Another alert just came in. This one includes my home address and mentions my sister in Portland by name. They want me to know they can reach anyone, anywhere. The echo chamber isn't just about repeating false information. It's about creating a resonance frequency that makes truth impossible to distinguish from manipulation. Tomorrow, I'm going to find out who's conducting this orchestra of lies. Thread continues below. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 89. Posted via encrypted VPN location spoofed. Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates. March 17, 2025, 2:34 p.m.
Track 347.
I went undercover today. Not the trench coat and fake mustache kind, the blend into the crowd with a baseball cap kind. What I discovered in Atlanta's supposedly dangerous evacuation zones has shattered my understanding of what we're dealing with. This morning, I mapped out every location mentioned in yesterday's alerts. Chemical spills at Peachtree and 8th. Gas leaks between 10th and 14th. Terrorist threats near the MARTA station. Medical emergencies at Centennial Park. According to my phone, half of downtown Atlanta was simultaneously uninhabitable and perfectly safe, depending on which demographic profile I fit. I started at the Peachtree corridor, the epicenter of yesterday's phantom chemical spill. Armed with a borrowed GoPro and my journalist credentials, I spent 3 hours documenting the most boringly normal city block you've ever seen. Food trucks served lunch. Construction workers jackhammered sidewalks. Office workers grabbed coffee between meetings. If there had been a chemical emergency here, someone forgot to tell the hazmat teams. But something else was happening, something almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. I positioned myself at a cafe with a clear view of the intersection and started tracking pedestrian behavior. Over 2 hours, I watched dozens of people approach the corner, check their phones, and abruptly change direction. Not all of them, maybe 1 in 10. Always the same pattern: approach, check phone, retreat. These people were still receiving evacuation alerts. I approached a woman in her 30s who'd just done the phone check and retreat dance. Professional attire, stressed expression, the universal look of someone trying to get somewhere important. "Excuse me, did you just get an emergency alert?" She looked at me like I'd asked her social security number. I'm not supposed to talk about it." "Not supposed to talk about what?" The alert said. It said not to discuss emergency information with unauthorized personnel. She glanced at her phone nervously. It said there could be penalties. Before I could ask more questions, she hurried away, clutching her phone like a lifeline. That phrase, unauthorized personnel, sent ice through my veins. I'd never seen that language in legitimate emergency alerts. This wasn't crisis management, it was information control. Over the next hour, I approached 7 more people who'd received alerts. 6 refused to talk, citing the same unauthorized personnel warning. The 7th, a college student named Marcus, was more forthcoming. "Dude, these alerts are insane," he said, showing me his phone. "Look at this." His screen displayed a message I'd never seen before. "Emergency alert, Atlanta Behavioral Health. Psychological evaluation required. Failure to comply with previous evacuation orders indicates potential threat assessment needed. Report to nearest digital check-in station. Location: Peachtree Center, Level B2. "There's no such thing as Atlanta Behavioral Health," I told him. "And what's a digital check-in station?" "That's what I thought. But," he gestured around us, "what if I'm wrong? What if there really is something dangerous here and I'm just too stupid to see it?" The alerts weren't just providing false information, they were undermining people's confidence in their own perceptions. Gaslighting through emergency management. I spent the afternoon following Marcus to the supposed digital check-in station in Peachtree Center. Level B2 turned out to be a parking garage, empty except for a single white van with government plates and 2 men in suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a federal recruitment poster. Marcus approached them hesitantly. "I got an alert saying I needed to check in." One of the men scanned a tablet, then looked up with practiced efficiency. "Name and phone number for verification." I watched from behind a concrete pillar as Marcus provided his information. The man with the tablet asked a series of questions. Where had Marcus been when he received his first alert? Who had he talked to about it? What was his normal route through downtown? Had he posted anything on social media about emergency procedures? The questions weren't about public safety. They were intelligence gathering. After 15 minutes, they handed Marcus a small device that looked like a fitness tracker. "Wear this for the next 72 hours, one of them instructed. "It will monitor your location and physiological responses to ensure you're not experiencing adverse effects from potential exposure." Exposure to what? That information is classified for your safety. Compliance is mandatory under the public health emergency provisions. Marcus strapped on the device and left. I waited until the van departed, then tried to follow it, but it disappeared into downtown traffic like it had never existed. When I got home, I called Beckett immediately. "They're not just tracking digital behavior," I told him. "They're doing physical surveillance, biometric monitoring, psychological profiling. This is a complete intelligence operation disguised as emergency management." "It gets worse," Beckett said, his voice tight with stress. "I've been analyzing the alert patterns and they're not random. The system is learning from each response, refining its targeting algorithms, optimizing for behavioral compliance." "Meaning what?" meaning every time someone follows a fake evacuation order, ignores a false alert, or reports to a non-existent check-in station, the system gets better at manipulating the next person. It's machine learning applied to psychological warfare. Jesus, how many people are we talking about? Based on the metadata signatures, conservatively, 50,000 Atlantans have received personalized alerts in the past 3 days. The system has compiled behavioral profiles on a significant percentage of the city's population. As Beckett spoke, both our phones erupted in that familiar, dreaded alert tone. But this time, the sound was different. Not the harsh, attention-grabbing emergency signal, but something subtler, almost musical. The overlapping frequencies created harmonics that were somehow more disturbing than the original cacophony. My alert was brief but chilling. Emergency alert. Atlanta Information Security. Unauthorized investigation detected. Ren Holloway, journalist license #J4471. Immediate cessation of activities required. Continued non-compliance will result in protective custody. Beckett's message was longer, more technical. Emergency alert. Federal Cybersecurity Task Force. Beckett Ray, IT security analyst. Unauthorized access to classified systems detected. Surrender all devices and data immediately. Report to Federal Building, Room 1247. Non-compliance constitutes federal crime. They know everything, Beckett whispered. Our names, our professions, our license numbers. They know we've been working together. How is that possible? The alerts aren't just one-way communication. Every time we interact with them, screenshot them, analyze their metadata, even discuss them near our phones, we're providing data points. The system has been profiling us while we've been trying to profile it. That evening, I tried calling Dr. Thea Marsh one more time. To my surprise, she answered, but her voice carried a tension I'd never heard before. Ren, you need to stop this investigation. Now. Thea, what do you know about these alerts? The CDC must have. The CDC has nothing to do with this. Nothing official anyway. But there are parallel programs. Research initiatives that don't appear in public budgets. Research into what? A long pause. Behavioral modification through crisis simulation. Testing how populations respond to emergency authority. Mapping social networks through panic responses. That's what I thought. Thea, we need to expose this. People are being manipulated, surveilled, psychologically conditioned.
No.
Her voice was sharp, frightened. Ren, you don't understand. This isn't some rogue operation you can expose in a blog post. This is funded, authorized, and protected at levels that make career journalists disappear. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to save you. And myself. Stop digging, delete everything you found, and pray they consider you a small enough threat to ignore. The line went dead. I'm writing this at 2 a.m., having spent hours thinking about Thea's warning. Every instinct I have as a journalist tells me to push forward, to expose this systematic manipulation of American citizens. But every survival instinct I have tells me that some stories are too dangerous to tell. Then I remember Marcus, strapping on that tracking device without question. I think about the thousands of people receiving personalized psychological manipulation disguised as public safety. I think about the algorithms learning to exploit human fear with increasing precision. Tomorrow, I'm going to try something different. Instead of investigating the system, I'm going to let it investigate me. I'm going to follow every alert, comply with every instruction, and document what happens when you surrender completely to algorithmic authority. Maybe the only way to expose a system designed to manipulate behavior is to let it manipulate mine. Update 2:47 a.m. Just received an alert containing tomorrow's weather forecast, my coffee order from this morning, and a reminder about my dentist appointment next week. They're not just monitoring my location and communications. They're in my calendar, my purchase history, my medical records. The emergency alert system has become a portal into every aspect of my digital life. The question isn't what they're planning to do with this information. The question is what they're not already doing. Thread continues below. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 67. Posted via mesh network. Traditional internet compromised. Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates March 18, 2025, 11:47 a.m.
Thread 4, 47.
I followed my own advice. Yesterday, I became the perfect compliant citizen, following every alert, obeying every instruction, surrendering to the system's guidance. What I discovered in those 12 hours of algorithmic obedience has left me questioning whether I'm documenting a story or participating in my own psychological demolition. The first alert came at 6:23 a.m., before my coffee had finished brewing. Emergency alert. Atlanta Health Optimization. Ren Holloway. Stress indicators elevated. Recommended route to work. Bypass Peachtree. Use Spring St. Physiological monitoring suggests caffeine dependency. Alternative beverages available at participating locations. They knew I hadn't slept well. They knew my morning routine. They knew I was stressed, and they were offering to manage that stress through route optimization and dietary suggestions. The alert included a map highlighting 17 coffee shops that served anxiety-reducing herbal alternatives. I followed the suggested route to work, documenting everything. Spring Street was unusually quiet. Later, I realized other people had probably received alerts directing them elsewhere. The recommended coffee shop, a place I'd never heard of called Mindful Grounds, had my order ready when I arrived. Ren Holloway? The barista asked before I'd said a word. 1 chamomile lavender blend, extra honey, served at optimal temperature for stress reduction. How did you? Atlanta Health Optimization Program. We got your order this morning along with your dietary recommendations. She handed me a cup that was, admittedly, exactly the right temperature. The system also suggests you avoid processed sugars today and increase your protein intake. There's a list of participating restaurants on your phone. I checked my phone. Sure enough, a new app had appeared overnight, Atlanta Wellness Navigator. I don't remember downloading it. I certainly hadn't authorized its installation. But there it was, displaying my real-time biometric data, stress levels, and personalized recommendations for everything from walking routes to meal choices. The app knew I'd slept 4.2 hours. It knew my heart rate had spiked at 2:47 a.m. when I received that final alert. It knew I'd been grinding my teeth, something I didn't even know I did. And it was using all this information to guide my behavior with the gentle persistence of a concerned friend. By 9 a.m., I was following a breadcrumb trail of algorithmic suggestions through a version of Atlanta I'd never experienced. Traffic lights seemed to turn green just as I approached. Crosswalk signals gave me exactly enough time to cross without hurrying. The subway arrived within 30 seconds of my reaching the platform. The city was choreographing itself around my movement. My destination was supposed to be the main library, where I planned to research the legal framework that might authorize this kind of surveillance. But as I emerged from the MARTA station, my phone buzzed with a new instruction. Emergency alert, Atlanta Behavioral Research. Scheduled interview, Dr. Thea Marsh. Location, Atlanta Center for Public Health. Time, 10 a.m. Compliance improves stress indicators. Alternative activities suspended pending consultation. Dr. Thea Marsh, the CDC epidemiologist who'd been my source, who'd warned me to stop investigating, who'd hung up on me in fear. Now the system was scheduling a meeting between us. The Atlanta Center for Public Health turned out to be a gleaming office building I'd never noticed before, despite walking past its location dozens of times. The lobby directory listed dozens of organizations I'd never heard of: Department of Behavioral Compliance, Institute for Crisis Response Optimization, Center for Population Stability Studies. Thea was waiting in a conference room on the 14th floor, but she looked nothing like the confident epidemiologist I'd interviewed days earlier. Her hands shook as she poured coffee from a thermal carafe. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept as poorly as I had. "Ren," she said without looking up, "I'm sorry about this. I didn't have a choice." "About what? Did you request this meeting?" "No, the system did. It determined that direct intervention was necessary to manage your investigation." The phrase direct intervention made my stomach clench. "Thea, what exactly is your role in all this?" She finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never expected from a federal scientist: genuine terror. "I'm a consultant for the Behavioral Research Division. My job is to analyze population responses to crisis scenarios and recommend optimization strategies." Optimization of what? Compliance, social stability, information control. She sat down heavily, as if the words had physically exhausted her. "Ren, what you're documenting isn't a malfunction or a rogue operation. It's a systematic deployment of next-generation emergency management technology." Next generation. Traditional emergency alerts are crude. One message to everyone, hoping for blanket compliance. This system is individualized, responsive, adaptive. It learns from each interaction, refines its psychological profile of each citizen, and delivers precisely calibrated messages designed to produce optimal behavioral outcomes. Optimal for whom? For stability, for compliance, for control. Thea's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Ren, they're not just tracking who follows evacuation orders. They're mapping the psychology of an entire city. Every response to every alert teaches the system something new about human behavior under stress." I thought about Marcus in the parking garage, about the biometric device they'd given him, about my own morning of algorithmic compliance. How many cities? Atlanta is the pilot program. If it succeeds. She gestured vaguely at the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, which offered a panoramic view of the city below. Nationwide deployment is scheduled for next month.
Jesus Christ.
Thea, we have to expose this. This is unconstitutional surveillance, behavioral manipulation. With what evidence? Her laugh was bitter, exhausted. Everything you've documented can be explained as software glitches, beta testing, pilot programs for enhanced emergency services. The legal framework already exists: National Defense Authorization Acts, public health emergency provisions, Patriot Act extensions you've never heard of. Then why are you helping them? Because refusal isn't an option. She pulled out her phone and showed me an alert I recognized. The same format, the same subtle harmonics, but with content that made my blood freeze. Emergency Alert, Behavioral Compliance Division. Dr. Thea Marsh, epidemiologist. Cooperation required for family safety. Daughter Sarah, age 12, Atlanta Jewish Academy. Continued participation ensures educational continuity. Non-compliance results in educational reassignment. They're using her school as leverage, Thea said quietly. Sarah doesn't know, but her entire educational experience is now contingent on my cooperation. Her teachers, her curriculum, her social interactions, all managed by the same system that's managing your investigation. That's kidnapping. That's coercion of a federal employee. That's the future of social management. Thea's phone buzzed with a new alert, and she glanced at it with the resigned expression of someone checking a leash. "Ren, they didn't bring you here to interrogate you. They brought you here to offer you a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Integration or isolation. Cooperation or elimination. They've been studying your psychology for 3 days, analyzing your behavioral patterns, mapping your social connections. They know exactly how to manage you." As if summoned by her words, my phone erupted with a cascade of alerts. Not the harsh emergency tone, but that subtle musical harmony that had become the soundtrack to my investigation. The messages appeared faster than I could read them. Atlanta Behavioral Research, Integration Offer. Journalistic skills valuable for system optimization. Embedded reporter position available. Document system success stories. Salary, $150,000 annually. Benefits include family protection services. Alternative, continued non-compliance. Journalistic license review initiated. Federal investigation for domestic terrorism. Association with known cybercriminal Beckett Ray. Property seizure under national security provisions. Decision required 72 hours. Continued investigation activities monitored. Escalation protocols authorized. Thea watched me read, her expression a mixture of sympathy and resignation. They're very good at this, Ren. They've had months to perfect the approach. The carrot is always exactly what you need, and the stick is always exactly what you fear most. What did you choose? I chose my daughter's safety over my professional integrity. I chose to be a collaborator rather than a victim. She stood up, gathering her things with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd given up hope. What will you choose? I need to think. No, you don't. You need to decide. The thinking part is what got you here in the first place. I left the building in a daze, my phone now quiet for the first time in days. The city around me looked different, not because anything had physically changed, but because I now understood what I was seeing. Every traffic pattern, every crowd movement, every person checking their phone at precisely the right moment. It was all orchestrated, managed, optimized for compliance. I tried calling Beckett, but his number went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later, then again. By evening, I was calling every hour, hearing the same automated message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. They'd eliminated my technical support. Detective Jasper Lane called me at 8 p.m., his voice carrying the flat, professional tone of someone delivering bad news. Ren, I need you to come down to the station. We need to talk about your association with Beckett Ray. What about Beckett? Is he okay? He's wanted for federal crimes related to unauthorized access of classified systems, computer fraud, cyber terrorism, violations of the Espionage Act. Heavy stuff, Ren. Life in prison stuff. That's insane. He was helping me investigate. He was helping you commit federal crimes. There's a difference. Jasper's tone softened slightly. Look, I've known you for 2 years. You're a good journalist, but you're in way over your head here. Come in, make a statement, distance yourself from Ray's activities, and maybe we can work something out. Work what out? Your cooperation in exchange for immunity. You help us understand Ray's network, and we help you avoid conspiracy charges. After he hung up, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone as it displayed a constant stream of updates from the Atlanta Wellness Navigator app. My stress levels were critical. My sleep debt was accumulating. My social isolation was increasing. The system was concerned about my well-being. At 11:47 p.m., I received one final alert for the day. Emergency alert, Atlanta Behavioral Research. Decision deadline, 47 hours remaining. Stress reduction activities recommended. Avoid isolation. Social contact beneficial. Consider family communications. System optimization continues regardless of participation. The last line was the most chilling. The system would continue whether I cooperated or not. My investigation, my resistance, my choices, they were all irrelevant to the larger project. I was just another data point in a massive behavioral experiment. I'm writing this at midnight, knowing that every word is being monitored, analyzed, and incorporated into my psychological profile. Tomorrow, I'll make my choice. Integration or isolation, cooperation or elimination. But tonight, I'm realizing that the choice was made long ago, by people I'll never meet, using algorithms I'll never understand, for purposes that extend far beyond anything I initially imagined. The system doesn't need my cooperation to succeed. It just needs me to stop interfering with its success. Thread continues below. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 23. Posted via mesh network, traditional internet compromised. Update 12:34 a.m. All mesh network access terminated. This may be my final post. Update 12:35 a.m. Network restored. Message appeared on screen. Continued documentation serves system optimization objectives.
Participation appréciée.
They want me to keep writing. The question is, why? Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates, March 19, 2025, for 17 a.m.
Track 5, 47.
I made my choice at 3:47 a.m., but not the one they expected. Instead of choosing between integration and elimination, I chose revelation. What I'm about to share will either free us or destroy me, but the time for half measures is over. Beckett didn't disappear. He went underground. At 2:30 a.m., a message appeared on my laptop screen, not through any app or browser, but burned directly into the pixels like an afterimage. Parking garage, level P3, southeast corner. Come alone. Delete this message. The text faded after 30 seconds, leaving no trace in my system logs. Whoever had sent it understood digital forensics better than the people hunting them. I found Beckett huddled behind a concrete pillar in the bowels of the Peachtree Center garage, surrounded by a nest of laptops, tablets, and devices I didn't recognize. He looked like he'd been living on energy drinks and paranoia for days. Dark circles under his eyes, 3 days of stubble, the twitchy alertness of someone who'd stopped trusting shadows. Jesus, Beckett, what happened to you? What happened? He gestured at his electronic fortress. I cracked their system, Ren. I got inside, and what I found. He pulled up a screen filled with code that looked like nothing I'd ever seen. This isn't just surveillance. It's not even just behavioral modification. It's social architecture. What does that mean? It means they're not just watching us or manipulating us. They're redesigning society from the ground up, using emergency alerts as the delivery mechanism. His fingers flew across keyboards, pulling up interface after interface. Look at this. The first screen showed a map of Atlanta overlaid with thousands of colored dots, each pulsing at different rates. Red dots moved quickly through the city. Blue dots clustered in residential areas. Green dots formed geometric patterns around commercial districts. Each dot is a person, Beckett explained. The colors represent psychological profiles, the movement patterns show behavioral predictability, the clustering shows social network mapping. They're not just tracking where people go. They're predicting where people will go, who they'll interact with, what they'll buy, how they'll vote. This is based on emergency alert responses. Emergency alerts are just the input mechanism. Watch this. He pulled up another screen showing a timeline of the past week. Every time someone receives an alert, the system records not just their compliance or non-compliance, but their emotional response, their decision-making process, their social consultation patterns. I watched data streams flowing across the screen like digital blood through algorithmic veins. Emotional response? How can they possibly? Biometric data from smartphones. Heart rate sensors, facial recognition through front cameras, vocal stress analysis from microphones, movement patterns from accelerometers. Every phone is a comprehensive biometric monitoring station, and most people never think to turn off the sensors. He showed me my own data profile, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The system knew I'd been stressed for days, but it also knew exactly what kind of stress. Investigative excitement versus personal fear versus professional frustration. It had tracked my sleep patterns, my eating habits, my social interactions. It knew I'd called my mother twice in the past week, something I usually did once a month. They know I'm worried about her, I said, staring at the correlation between my mother calling frequency and my stress indicators. They know everything, Ren, but that's not the scary part. Beckett pulled up a different interface, this one showing what looked like a city planning document. The scary part is what they're doing with the information. The document was titled Atlanta Social Optimization Protocol, Phase 2 Implementation. Below that, a subtitle, real-time population management through targeted crisis simulation. Phase 2. I asked, we've been living through Phase 1 for the past week. Individual behavioral modification through personalized alerts. Phase 2 is... He scrolled down to a section that made my blood freeze. Phase 2 is social engineering on a macro scale. The plan was breathtaking in its scope and terrifying in its implications. Using the behavioral profiles gathered during Phase 1, the system would begin orchestrating citywide scenarios designed to achieve specific social outcomes. Want to reduce traffic congestion? Generate a series of alerts that naturally distribute commuter patterns. Want to influence local elections? Create emergency scenarios that prime voters for specific emotional responses. Want to suppress social unrest? Design crisis simulations that channel anger into approved outlets. This is manipulation of democracy, I whispered. Democracy, economics, social relationships, cultural evolution, everything. Beckett's voice carried the hollow tone of someone who'd stared too long into an abyss. And Atlanta is just the pilot program. Look at this. He showed me a national deployment map. 50 major cities, each scheduled for their own optimization protocol over the next 6 months. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, every major population center in America was going to be subjected to systematic psychological manipulation disguised as emergency management. How many people know about this? At the operational level, maybe 24. At the policy level, maybe 6. At the highest level, he shrugged. Could be one person, could be a committee, could be an algorithm that's evolved beyond human oversight. We have to expose this. This is the story of the century. With what evidence? Beckett laughed bitterly. Everything I've shown you exists in classified systems that I accessed illegally. The moment we go public, they'll deny everything, classify the evidence, and prosecute us for cyber terrorism. Then what do? We become the story. He turned to face me, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Desperate hope. We don't just document what they're doing. We prove it by demonstrating how it works. How? We hack the system in real time during Phase 2 implementation. We show people exactly how their behavior is being manipulated while it's happening. We turn their own technology against them. It was an insane plan. It was also the only plan that made sense. When does Phase 2 start? Tomorrow.
6 Uhr morgens.
They're calling it Operation Civic Harmony, a citywide drill designed to test multi-vector emergency response protocols. He pulled up the operational details. In reality, it's the largest social psychology experiment ever conducted on American soil. I stared at the screen, trying to process the magnitude of what we were discussing. What do you need from me? I need you to be the voice. I can hack their systems, disrupt their protocols, maybe even turn their own alerts against them. But I can't reach people the way you can. You're the journalist, the storyteller, the one who can make people understand what's happening to them. While it's happening, real-time documentation of mass psychological manipulation. The story tells itself. We just have to be brave enough to be part of it. We spent the next 2 hours planning our assault on the system. Beckett had identified vulnerabilities in the alert distribution network, weaknesses that would allow us to inject our own messages into the stream. Not enough to take control, but enough to provide counter-narratives, alternative interpretations, reality checks for people caught in the manipulation matrix. The key is timing, he explained. We wait until they've deployed their primary psychological triggers. Then we provide immediate context. Show people that their emotional responses are being artificially induced. Won't they just shut us down? Probably. But if we're fast enough, if we can reach enough people simultaneously. He gestured at his electronic fortress. Sometimes revolution happens one mind at a time. Sometimes it happens all at once. As dawn approached, I realized the irony of our situation. We were planning to fight an information war using the same tools our opponents were using: manipulation, psychological influence, technological disruption. The only difference was our intent. They wanted control, we wanted freedom. "Beckett," I said as we prepared to leave the garage, "what if we're wrong? What if this really is some kind of legitimate emergency management program, and we're about to sabotage genuine public safety efforts?" He paused at his laptops, fingers hovering over keyboards that could either save or damn us. "Then we're about to commit the most well-intentioned act of domestic terrorism in American history. And if we're right, then we're about to commit the most necessary act of information warfare in American history." At 5:30 a.m., I posted this update from the parking garage, using Beckett's modified connection protocols. In 30 minutes, Phase 2 of the Atlanta Social Optimization Protocol will begin. Hundreds of thousands of people will receive carefully crafted messages designed to influence their behavior, their emotions, their fundamental understanding of reality. They won't know they're being manipulated. That's the point. But we'll be watching. We'll be recording. And at the crucial moment, we'll be fighting back with the most powerful weapon in the information age: the truth delivered in real time. If this is my last post, remember that the most dangerous emergency alert is the one that feels completely normal. The revolution will be digitized. Thread continues below. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 156. Anomalous spike detected. Posted via mesh network, signal strength increasing. Update 5:47 a.m. Beckett systems are online. Operation Civic Harmony initiating. Counter-narrative protocols ready. Update 5:48 a.m. My phone just received its first Phase 2 alert. It's beginning. Final update 5:59 a.m. Whatever happens next, remember, your phone is not your friend. Your government is not your protector. Your emergency alerts are not your salvation. Trust nothing. Question everything. The truth is coming in 60 seconds. Posted by @RenHolloway_investigates, March 19, 2025, 7:23 p.m.
Thread 6, 47.
Emergency status. Critical. The counter-narrative lasted exactly 17 minutes. At 6:17 a.m., every device in Atlanta simultaneously received the same message: terrorist cyber attack in progress. Ignore all unofficial communications. Trust only verified government sources. Beckett's carefully crafted truth-telling operation was branded as terrorism before most people even saw it. I'm writing this from the bathroom of a 24-hour diner on Ponce de Leon, the only place I could find with old-school Ethernet connections that bypass the cellular networks they're monitoring. My phone has been a brick since this morning. Not dead, but worse. It's been weaponized against me. Let me explain what Operation Civic Harmony actually looks like when you're watching it happen in real time. 6 a.m. The first wave of alerts went out, perfectly coordinated across the metro area. Everyone received messages appropriate to their psychological profile. Parents got child safety warnings. Commuters got traffic emergencies. Business owners got economic alerts. Students got campus security notices. Each alert was personally crafted to trigger maximum emotional compliance. 6:03 a.m. Beckett's counter messages started deploying. Brief, targeted reality checks. Your emergency alert is part of a behavioral study. Check with neighbors. Did they get the same message? Simple stuff, designed to make people pause, think, compare notes. 6:07 a.m. The system adapted. This is what Beckett hadn't anticipated, what none of us had understood. The Atlanta Social Optimization Protocol wasn't just a database running predetermined responses. It was a learning system, and it learned fast. When people started questioning their alerts, the system immediately began profiling the questioners. When Beckett's messages appeared, the system didn't just block them, it analyzed them, reverse-engineered our psychological approach, and began crafting counter narratives tailored specifically to undermine our credibility. 6:12 a.m. My phone buzzed with a message from my own phone number. Ren, your paranoia is affecting your judgment. The alerts are legitimate. You're putting people in danger with your conspiracy theories. Other people received similar messages, apparently from their own devices, perfectly crafted to sound like their own internal voice of reason. The system had learned to impersonate our better angels. 6:17 a.m. Total information warfare. Every screen in the city, phones, tablets, electronic billboards, even car navigation systems, displayed the same message about a terrorist cyber attack. But here's the truly insidious part. The message was accompanied by audio specifically designed to trigger stress responses and reduce critical thinking. The sound was subsonic, mostly, a low-frequency hum that made your chest tighten and your thoughts scatter. I only noticed it because I'd been listening to Beckett's audio analysis for days. Most people just felt suddenly anxious and didn't know why. 6:23 a.m. Beckett went silent. His last message came through on the mesh network we'd established. They're not just blocking us, they're learning from us. Every technique we try teaches them how to do it better. We're not fighting the system, we're training it. That was 4 hours ago. I've been trying to reach him since then, but his digital fortress in the parking garage is empty. No equipment, no trace, no sign of struggle. He simply vanished along with every piece of evidence we'd accumulated. But the real horror isn't what happened to Beckett. It's what I've been watching happen to Atlanta all day. Phase 2 isn't just about individual manipulation. It's about social contagion, using the alert system to spread behavioral modifications through social networks like a virus. Here's how it works. The system identifies key social nodes, people with large social circles, high influence, strong credibility within their communities. It then crafts alerts specifically designed to change their behavior in ways that will influence their entire network. I watched it happen to Sarah Chun, a popular food blogger with 50,000 local followers. She received an alert about contaminated water supplies that was complete fiction. But the alert was so perfectly tailored to her specific anxieties about food safety that she immediately shared it across all her platforms. Within an hour, half the restaurants in her neighborhood had voluntarily shut down. The alert was fake, but the economic impact was real. And that was the point. I watched it happen to Marcus Williams, a high school basketball coach whose players look up to him like a father figure. He received alerts about increased gang activity near the school that prompted him to cancel after-school programs and send kids straight home. The alerts were fabricated, but the social isolation was real. Dozens of teenagers who normally would have been playing basketball or doing homework together instead spent the afternoon alone with their devices, receiving their own targeted messages. I watched it happen to Rebecca Foster, a neighborhood Facebook group administrator. She received alerts about suspicious individuals that led her to post warnings about strangers in the area. The descriptions were vague enough to apply to anyone, specific enough to seem credible. Within hours, neighbors were reporting suspicious activity that was just people living their normal lives. The paranoia became self-perpetuating. This is social architecture in action, not just changing individual behavior, but reshaping the fundamental structure of community relationships. And the most terrifying part? It's working. By noon, Atlanta felt like a different city. People walking faster, avoiding eye contact, clutching their phones like lifelines. Conversations replaced by constant alert checking. Communities fragmenting into isolated individuals, each responding to their personalized psychological triggers. The system had achieved in 6 hours what authoritarian regimes spend decades trying to accomplish. A population that polices itself, trusts no one, and looks to technology for guidance about how to think and feel. I tried to document it all, but documenting became impossible when the system turned my own social network against me. 1:15 p.m. My mother called, voice tight with worry. "Ren, honey, I got an alert that said you've been posting dangerous information online. Are you okay? Are you having some kind of breakdown?" 1:32 p.m. My editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution sent a terse email. Ren, your recent social media activity has been flagged by our legal department. Please cease all posting related to emergency management systems until further notice. 2:47 p.m. My landlord texted, "Several neighbors have expressed concerns about suspicious activity from your apartment. Need to discuss lease terms." 3:18 p.m. My college roommate, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, sent a worried Facebook message. "Hey, saw some concerning posts from you. Are you taking care of your mental health?" None of them had actually seen my posts. The system had sent them targeted messages designed to make them worried about me, complete with vague references to my concerning behavior that felt real enough to prompt intervention. I was being systematically isolated, not through direct censorship, but through the manipulation of everyone I cared about. The system wasn't just changing my reality, it was changing everyone else's reality about me. 4:33 p.m. The isolation protocol escalated. Detective Jasper Lane called, his voice carrying the formal tone he used for official business. "Ren, I need you to come in for a voluntary interview. We've received reports about cyber terrorism activities linked to your accounts." "What reports?" "I can't discuss details, but several federal agencies are expressing interest in your recent online activities. I'm trying to help you here, but you need to cooperate." "Jasper, you know me. You know I'm not a terrorist. I know the person I thought you were, but the evidence suggests." "What evidence?" "Evidence that suggests you've been coordinating with hostile foreign actors to disrupt emergency management systems during a time of civic crisis." The conversation continued for another few minutes, but I barely heard it. The system had created a complete false identity for me: foreign connections, terrorist sympathies, cyber warfare capabilities, and it had done so using elements of truth twisted into lies. My investigation into the alert system became evidence of my participation in attacks against it. My concern for public safety became evidence of my intention to harm the public. By the time I hung up, I understood something that Beckett had been trying to tell me. We weren't fighting a surveillance system or even a manipulation system. We were fighting a reality fabrication system. It didn't just watch and influence, it created entirely new versions of truth, customized for each individual, distributed through social networks, and reinforced through artificial social pressure. 5:47 p.m. I made the decision to go underground. Not physically, I don't have Beckett's technical skills or resources, but informationally. I've deleted my social media accounts, ditched my phone, and I'm communicating only through methods that predate the smartphone surveillance infrastructure. This diner's internet connection runs through physical cables laid in the 1990s. The terminals are old enough that they don't have cameras or microphones. The Ethernet ports aren't connected to any monitoring systems. For the first time in days, I'm writing without being watched. But I can't stay hidden forever. And I can't fight a system this sophisticated with analog tools. 6:15 p.m. I received a message through the only secure channel I have left. It appeared on the diner's old CRT monitor. White text on a black screen. "Ren, not gone. Hiding. System is adaptive but not invulnerable. Found weakness. Meet tomorrow. Usual place. Level P2 this time. Bring nothing electronic. Trust no one else. B. Beckett is alive. More than that, he's found something." But as I prepare to leave this diner and venture back into the surveilled city, I realize something that makes my hands shake as I type these final words. I'm not sure I can trust him either. The system is adaptive. It learns. It creates false realities tailored to each individual. And if it's sophisticated enough to impersonate my own thoughts, if it's advanced enough to turn my entire social network against me, if it's powerful enough to create terrorist identities from journalistic investigation, how do I know that Beckett's message isn't just another manipulation? How do I know that his underground hideout isn't a trap? How do I know that the person I meet tomorrow will actually be Beckett, and not just another fabricated identity designed to lead me deeper into the system's web? I don't know. I can't know. The system has destroyed the possibility of trust by making everything potentially false. But I also can't stop fighting, because stopping means accepting a world where emergency alerts are psychological weapons, where social media is social control, where every device is a manipulation tool, and where truth itself becomes a customizable commodity. Tomorrow, I meet whatever is waiting for me in parking level P2. It might be Beckett. It might be a trap. It might be something I haven't even imagined yet. But tonight, I want to document one more thing I've observed about Operation Civic Harmony. It's not just changing how people behave. It's changing how people think about behavior itself. All day, I've watched people receive alerts, comply with instructions, and then rationalize their compliance as free choice. They're not just being manipulated, they're being taught to love their manipulation. I wasn't going to go to the store anyway. They say after receiving alerts that keep them home. I was already suspicious of that person. They say after receiving alerts that make them report their neighbors. I always trust official sources. They say after receiving alerts that discredit independent information. The system isn't just controlling behavior, it's rewriting memory, editing personal narratives, making people believe that their manipulated choices were always their own authentic choices. This is beyond social architecture. This is consciousness modification. And if they can do it to Atlanta, they can do it anywhere. Tomorrow, I disappear into whatever is waiting for me in that parking garage. If Beckett is really there, if his weakness in the system is real, if we can find a way to fight back. If not, then this may be the last authentic thought I ever have. Remember, your emergency alerts are not emergencies. Your social media is not social. Your smart devices are not smart. They're surveillance tools designed to make you compliant. The most dangerous message you'll ever receive is the one that feels completely reasonable. Question everything. Trust nothing. And remember that the only real emergency is the loss of your ability to think for yourself. The network effects are spreading. The cognitive infection is airborne. And the only immunity is awareness. Stay vigilant. Stay human. Stay free. Comments disabled. Shares 0. Views 1. Posted via analog terminal. Terminal access ending in 3 minutes. Connection severed at 7:41 p.m. Location: encrypted. Status: Ghost protocol active. Final message recovered from diner terminal cache by unknown source. Posted to mesh network at 11:47 p.m. Authentication: uncertain. Recovered from handwritten journal. Discovered in abandoned parking structure. Date: March 20th, 2025. Authentication: confirmed handwriting analysis, Wren Holloway. Recovery location: Peachtree Center Parking, level P2. Writing by hand feels foreign now. My fingers ache from gripping this pen, muscles unaccustomed to analog communication. But electrons can be manipulated. Ink cannot be hacked. These words exist in physical space, beyond the reach of their algorithms. For now, the person waiting for me in parking level P2 was not Beckett. It was Thea Marsh, and she was terrified. I found her huddled behind the same concrete pillar where Beckett had built his electronic fortress. But instead of laptops and cables, she clutched a manila folder and a bottle of prescription medication that rattled when her hands shook. "They took him," she said before I could speak. 3 hours ago, federal agents raided his apartment. But they didn't arrest him, Wren. They brought him in for voluntary consultation on cybersecurity threats. Then he's safe.
No.
Her voice cracked. He's not safe. None of us are safe. They didn't arrest him because they don't need to. They have something better than arrest. She opened the manila folder, revealing printed screenshots of text messages, emails, and social media posts, all from Beckett's accounts, all posted within the past 6 hours. Been thinking about this whole emergency alert thing. Maybe I was wrong. System seems pretty legitimate, actually. Wren's paranoia was contagious. Glad I stepped back before getting too deep into conspiracy theories. Working with authorities now to help secure emergency management systems. Feel good about contributing positively. Anyone worried about emergency alerts should talk to mental health professionals. These aren't surveillance tools, they're safety tools. Each message was perfectly crafted in Beckett's writing style, complete with his characteristic technical references and casual tone. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed he'd simply changed his mind. Digital puppet, Thea whispered. They've turned him into a digital puppet. How? Neural interfacing technology. Military grade. They can access his memories, his speech patterns, his social connections. They're using his digital identity to broadcast their narrative while he sits in a room somewhere, probably convinced he's participating voluntarily in a national security briefing. The folder contained more evidence. Screenshots of social media posts from dozens of Atlanta residents who had been questioning the emergency alert system, all suddenly posting similar messages about the importance of trusting official sources. Video clips of local news interviews where people who had previously expressed skepticism now praised the alert system's effectiveness. Mass digital identity theft, I said, understanding the scope of what I was seeing. Worse, mass consciousness modification. They're not just stealing digital identities, they're editing the people behind them, making them believe their new opinions are their original opinions. Thea's hands trembled as she pulled out another document, a CDC internal memo with her name in the header. Subject: Dr. Thea Marsh, Psychiatric Evaluation Recommendation. Dr. Marsh has exhibited increasing paranoia and conspiratorial thinking regarding legitimate emergency management protocols. Recommend immediate psychological evaluation and potential medical leave. Her behavior poses a risk to department morale and public health messaging. I never wrote this, she said, but it's in the CDC's official system. My supervisor called me in for a meeting this morning, showed me this memo and asked if I was having personal problems that were affecting my professional judgment. They're manufacturing evidence against you, against all of us. Look at this. The next document was a psychological profile with my photograph. According to the report, I was a high-risk individual with paranoid tendencies and delusions of persecution who posed a potential threat to public safety through misinformation campaigns. The profile was comprehensive, drawing on years of my social media activity, my medical records, my educational history, even my childhood therapy sessions after my parents' divorce. Painted a picture of someone unstable, unreliable, and dangerous. But the most chilling part wasn't the fabricated evidence. It was how reasonable it all sounded. The report took real facts about my life and wove them into a narrative that made my investigative work look like mental illness. They're not just discrediting us, I realized. They're rewriting our entire histories to make our resistance look like psychological pathology. Thea nodded, tears streaming down her face. And the worst part is, I'm starting to doubt myself. When I read this report about you, part of me wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe you really are having some kind of breakdown. Maybe I'm having one too. That's the point. They're not just attacking our credibility, they're attacking our ability to trust our own perceptions. It's working, Ren. I went to the pharmacy today to pick up my blood pressure medication, and they told me my prescription had been changed to antipsychotics. When I protested, they showed me my doctor's order, complete with notes about my recent behavioral changes and need for psychiatric intervention. She held up the bottle she'd been clutching. I don't know if these are my real medications or psychiatric drugs. I don't know if my doctor really prescribed them or if the system generated the prescription. I don't even know if my blood pressure actually needs medication or if that's just another layer of the manipulation. You can't take them. I can't not take them. If I refuse medication, that becomes evidence of my mental instability. If I take them, they might actually make me mentally unstable. There's no winning move. I understood then why she looked so terrified. She wasn't just facing imprisonment or discrediting. She was facing the complete dissolution of her sense of reality. The system had made it impossible for her to trust her own mind. How did you get away from the CDC? I didn't. They let me leave. Told me to take a few days off to get my head together. They're confident I'll either break down completely or come back convinced that I was wrong about everything. Will you? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the prescription bottle. I don't know. The doubt is like a poison, Ren. It spreads through everything. I look at evidence I gathered myself, and I wonder if I misinterpreted it. I remember conversations I had with Beckett, and I wonder if I imagined them. I read my own notes, and they seem like the ravings of a paranoid conspiracy theorist. That's not accident. That's programming. Maybe. Or maybe I really am losing my mind, and the conspiracy is just a symptom of my psychological breakdown. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Thea, listen to me. The fact that you're questioning your own perceptions doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you're being gaslit on an industrial scale. How can you be sure? Because I'm experiencing the same thing. Every piece of evidence I've gathered, every conclusion I've drawn, every connection I've made, it all seems suspect now. My own investigation feels like delusion. My own memories feel fabricated. Then maybe we are delusional. Or maybe that's exactly what they want us to think. I showed her my own evidence, the notes I'd taken, the screenshots I'd captured, the documentation I'd compiled over the past week. But as we reviewed it together, I felt the same creeping doubt she described. The evidence seemed thin, circumstantial, open to alternative interpretations. Look at this objectively, I said, as much to convince myself as her. A week ago, Atlanta was a normal city. Today, it's a surveillance state where emergency alerts control behavior, social media controls thought, and digital identities are weapons. That transformation didn't happen naturally. But maybe it did, Thea said. Maybe I'm just now noticing surveillance and manipulation that was always there. Maybe the emergency alert system really is legitimate, and I've been misinterpreting normal security measures as oppression. Then explain Beckett's disappearance. Maybe he wasn't disappeared. Maybe he came to his senses and decided to cooperate with authorities. Then explain the messages from his accounts. Maybe they're genuine. Maybe he really did change his mind. We were trapped in an epistemic maze, where every piece of evidence could be explained away, every perception could be questioned, every memory could be false. The system had achieved something more insidious than censorship or propaganda. It had made the very concept of truth unstable. My phone buzzed. I'd been carrying it turned off, battery removed, but somehow it had activated itself. A single message appeared on the screen. Ren, this is Beckett.
I'm okay.
Working with federal authorities now to secure emergency systems. You and Thea need to stop this conspiracy theory investigation. It's hurting people and helping hostile actors. Please come in voluntarily. We can get you the help you need. I showed the message to Thea. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked at me with eyes full of desperate hope. Maybe he's right, she whispered. Maybe we do need help. That was when I understood the true horror of what we were facing. The system wasn't just manufacturing false evidence. It was manufacturing false hope. It was using our love for Beckett, our trust in his judgment, our desire to believe that our friend was safe, to make us question everything we discovered. Thea, I said carefully, when did you last see Beckett in person? Yesterday morning, when we planned the counter-narrative operation. And how did he seem? Determined, excited, like he'd found something that could change everything. Does this message sound like that person? She read it again, and I watched her face change as she processed the implications.
No.
This sounds like someone trying to sound like Beckett, but missing his actual personality, or someone whose personality has been edited.
Jesus Christ, vrem.
What are we dealing with? I don't know, but I know we can't trust anything digital anymore. No phones, no computers, no electronic communication. If we're going to fight this, we have to do it the way people fought oppression before the internet existed. How? Face to face, person to person, physical evidence, analog communication, against a system that can manipulate reality itself, against a system that can manipulate digital reality. Physical reality is harder to edit. I was wrong, of course, but in that moment, surrounded by concrete and steel, writing with pen and paper, I believed that analog resistance was possible. I was about to learn that they had analog weapons too. Journal entry ends here. Remaining pages torn out. Note: security footage from Peachtree Center shows Dr. Marsh leaving the parking garage at 9:23 p.m. She was accompanied by 2 individuals in civilian clothes. No record of Ms. Holloway's departure. Investigation status: classified. Evidence status: archived. Case status: transferred to federal jurisdiction. Recovered from Secure Server Backup, Atlanta Federal Building. Date: March 25, 2025. Classification: Eyes Only Project Shepherd. Authentication: digital signature verified, Dr. Thea Marsh. Recovery note: found in deleted files during routine system maintenance. Medical log: subject evaluation. Patient: Ren Holloway. Detention ID: ATL 2025-0847. Attending: Dr. Thea Marsh, CDC Behavioral Health Division. Location: Federal Detention Facility, Atlanta. Date: March 23, 2025. I'm typing this on a secure terminal in the facility's medical wing, knowing it will be monitored, analyzed, and probably used against me. But I need to document what I'm seeing here, what they're doing to Ren, what they're planning to do to the rest of us. They brought me in 2 days after that meeting in the parking garage. Not arrested, consulted. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, no relation to the politician, she was quick to clarify with a tired smile. Explained that my expertise in epidemiology made me valuable for a special public health initiative. The initiative, as it turns out, is Project Shepherd. I'm writing this during my assigned evaluation session with Ren, who doesn't know I'm documenting our conversation. She sits across from me in a sterile white room, wearing civilian clothes but with the hollow look of someone who's been systematically broken down. They've had her for 5 days. "How are you feeling today, Ren?" I ask, following the script they gave me. "Like I'm living in someone else's dream," she says, staring at her hands. "Or nightmare. I can't tell the difference anymore." The facility looks like a high-end medical retreat. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, windows that show peaceful garden views. But Ren told me the windows are screens. The garden doesn't exist. When she tried to touch the glass yesterday, she discovered it was just a high-resolution display. "Even the fake nature feels real," she says. "That's the point, isn't it? To make it impossible to distinguish between authentic and artificial experiences." I'm supposed to guide her toward accepting the official narrative about the emergency alert system, to help her understand that her conspiracy theories were symptoms of a stress-induced psychological break. Instead, I find myself learning about the true scope of what we've stumbled into. "They showed me the other subjects," Ren continues. 17 people from Atlanta who questioned the alert system, all brought here for voluntary treatment, all gradually coming to understand that their concerns were unfounded. How are they being treated? Drugs mostly, not the crude psychiatric medications they threatened me with earlier. Something much more sophisticated. Dr. Warren calls it cognitive recalibration therapy. It doesn't suppress memories or alter personality. It adjusts the emotional and logical weights you assign to different experiences. She describes the process with disturbing clarity. Subjects are shown evidence of their own investigative work while under the influence of compounds that enhance suggestibility and reduce critical thinking. Trained counselors then guide them through reframing exercises that present alternative interpretations of everything they discovered. "The beautiful thing," Ren says, and I can hear Dr. Warren's words in her phrasing, "is that it doesn't feel like brainwashing. It feels like recovery, like waking up from a bad dream and realizing how paranoid and irrational you'd become." Do you feel that way? Sometimes. The drugs make everything seem so reasonable, so obvious. Of course, the emergency alert system is legitimate. Of course, federal authorities have protocols for managing public panic. Of course, individual citizens can't accurately assess complex security situations. She pauses, rubbing her temples. But then the medication wears off, and I remember things that don't fit the new narrative. Details about Beckett's analysis, inconsistencies in the alerts, evidence that got deleted but lives on in my handwritten notes. What happens to those memories? They become fuzzy, dreamlike. I start to doubt whether they really happened or if they're artifacts of my paranoid episode. The counselors say that's normal, that delusional thinking creates false memories that feel completely real. I ask about the other subjects, and Ren's expression darkens. Most of them have graduated to the next phase. They're being prepared for reintegration into their communities as success stories. Former conspiracy theorists who sought help and recovered their mental health. Prepared how? They practice telling their recovery stories. Rehearse interviews with local media about the importance of trusting official sources and seeking professional help when you start believing conspiracy theories. They seem genuinely grateful for the treatment. The horror of it settles over me as I understand the full mechanism. Project Shepherd isn't just discrediting individual dissidents. It's creating a template for mass psychological management. Every person who questions official narratives becomes a case study in the dangers of conspiracy thinking, and their eventual compliance becomes proof that the system works. Ren, do you remember what you discovered about the alert system? She looks directly at me for the first time in our session. I remember discovering that I was having a psychological breakdown and projecting my personal anxieties onto innocent emergency management protocols. The words come out in Dr. Warren's cadence, with Dr. Warren's clinical terminology. But Ren's eyes tell a different story. There's a flicker of recognition, a moment of genuine connection. Do you remember Beckett? I remember being concerned about a friend who was enabling my delusions instead of helping me get professional help. I'm grateful that the authorities intervened before I could drag him deeper into conspiracy thinking. What about the evidence you collected? Misinterpretations and coincidences that I wove into a narrative that made me feel important and special, like I was uncovering hidden truths that others couldn't see. Classic symptoms of paranoid ideation. But as she recites this explanation, she taps out a pattern on the table with her finger. Morse code. I learned it in Girl Scouts decades ago, but I still remember the basics.
HELPME.
I glance at the cameras in the corners of the room, then back at Ren. She's staring at me with desperate intensity, still speaking in her programmed voice about the importance of trusting medical professionals and official sources. The treatment is helping me understand how dangerous conspiracy thinking can be, she says, while tapping out, THEYKNOWYOUKNOW. I'm learning to recognize the warning signs of paranoid ideation. She continues, tapping, GTOUT, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to help others avoid the same mistakes. She concludes, tapping, DONTTRUSTANYONE. I realize with growing horror that Ren isn't being successfully reprogrammed. She's pretending to be reprogrammed while maintaining her authentic consciousness through pure force of will. The drugs, the therapy, the isolation, the constant gaslighting. She's enduring all of it while preserving her real memories and real understanding. But the effort is destroying her. I can see the strain in every line of her face, the exhaustion in her posture. She's fighting a war inside her own mind, and she's losing. Dr. Marsh. Dr. Warren's voice comes through the intercom. Please wrap up your session. We have other evaluations scheduled. Of course, I respond, knowing that this might be my last chance to communicate with the real Ren. As I stand to leave, Ren grabs my hand. To any observer, it would look like a patient seeking comfort from her doctor. But she presses a small piece of paper into my palm. Thank you for helping me understand how much better I feel now, she says loudly enough for the microphones. Then, barely whispered, server room, basement level. Password is Shepherd. Upload everything. I slip the paper into my pocket and squeeze her hand reassuringly. You're making excellent progress, Ren. Keep focusing on recovery. As I walk toward the door, she calls after me, Dr. Marsh? Will I be able to go home soon? I turn back, and for a moment her mask slips completely. The programmed compliance vanishes, and I see the real Ren. Terrified, desperate, but still fighting. Soon, I tell her, hoping it's not a lie. The paper in my pocket contains access codes for the facility's data systems and detailed instructions for uploading evidence to external servers. Ren has been planning an escape, not physical escape, but information escape. She wants to get the truth out before they finish breaking her mind. But as I leave the medical wing and return to my assigned quarters, I realize the trap I'm walking into. Dr. Warren is waiting for me with a concerned expression and a cup of herbal tea. How did your session with Ms. Holloway go? She asks. Very well. She's responding positively to treatment. I'm so glad to hear that. And how are you feeling about your own evaluation process? The tea smells faintly of almonds and something else I can't identify. My mouth is suddenly dry, and the cup looks incredibly appealing. I'm finding it very helpful, I hear myself say, accepting the tea with steady hands. Excellent. We've developed some new therapeutic approaches that I'm excited to share with you. Based on your CDC background, I think you'll find our research fascinating. I sip the tea and immediately feel a sense of calm washing over me. My paranoia about the facility seems suddenly ridiculous. Of course they're trying to help people. Of course Ren needs treatment. Of course I've been overreacting to normal security protocols. Dr. Marsh, Dr. Warren says gently, I want you to know that we understand how difficult it must be to see a colleague struggling with conspiracy ideation. It's natural to want to enable their delusions rather than confront them with reality. Yes, I agree, feeling the rightness of her words. I can see how I might have been too sympathetic to her paranoid thinking. The important thing is that you recognize it now. Recovery begins with accepting help. The paper in my pocket feels like it's burning through the fabric, but the urgency I felt minutes ago is fading. Ren's desperate Morse code messages seem like symptoms of her illness rather than cries for help. The facility's peaceful atmosphere feels genuine rather than manufactured. Would you like to join our research team? Dr. Warren asks. Your epidemiological expertise would be valuable for scaling these interventions to larger populations. That sounds wonderful, I hear myself saying, and I mean it. The work they're doing here is important. Public health requires public compliance. Conspiracy thinking is a social contagion that needs to be treated like any other epidemic. But even as these thoughts crystallize in my mind, some small part of me is screaming. Some fragment of my authentic self recognizes what's happening and fights against it. That fragment forces my hand into my pocket, forces my fingers to find the paper, forces me to remember Ren's desperate eyes. Dr. Warren, I say, my voice steady despite the war raging in my head. Could you show me the research data? I'd love to understand the methodology better. Of course, I think you'll find our results quite compelling. She leads me toward the elevator, chattering enthusiastically about success rates and behavioral modification protocols. But that screaming fragment of my consciousness is using every ounce of will to maintain awareness of what's really happening. They're not just treating conspiracy theorists. They're creating a behavioral modification system that can be applied to any form of dissent, any questioning of official narratives, any individual resistance to institutional control. As the elevator descends toward the basement levels, I realize that Project Shepherd isn't about emergency management or public safety. It's about perfecting the technology of consent, making people genuinely want to comply with authority, genuinely believe that resistance is pathology, genuinely grateful for their own subjugation. The elevator stops, and Dr. Warren gestures toward a corridor lined with servers and monitoring equipment. Welcome to the heart of our operation, she says. This is where we process and analyze the behavioral data that makes precision psychological intervention possible. I nod appreciatively, playing the role of interested colleague while that fragment of authentic consciousness screams warnings I can barely hear. The T's effects are stronger now, and my genuine enthusiasm for their work is overwhelming my capacity for resistance. But Ren's paper is still in my pocket. Her access codes are still viable. Her desperate plan is still possible. The question is whether enough of the real me will survive the next few minutes to execute it. Dr. Warren hands me a tablet displaying research summaries and success metrics. The data is genuinely impressive. Measurable reductions in conspiracy thinking, improved compliance with official communications, enhanced social cohesion in targeted communities. Beautiful work, I say, and I mean it completely, but my fingers are moving without conscious direction. Accessing the facility's network through Ren's backdoor, uploading files to external servers, sending encrypted packages to journalists and researchers and activists across the country. Dr. Marsh. Dr. Warren's voice seems to come from very far away. Are you all right? I look up from the tablet, my face arranged in an expression of professional interest while my unconscious mind finishes transmitting evidence of Project Shepherd to the outside world. I'm perfect, I tell her, and in that moment, I believe it completely. The upload completes just as the last of my resistance dissolves into pharmaceutical compliance. Ren's final gambit succeeds just as the last person who could have stopped it becomes genuinely convinced that stopping it would be wrong. I spend the rest of the evening touring the facility with Dr. Warren, learning about their remarkable success in treating social media-induced paranoia and conspiracy ideation. By the time I return to my quarters, I'm genuinely excited about joining their research team. I never think about the paper I burned in the bathroom sink, or the files I uploaded to external servers, or the desperate woman in the medical wing who sacrificed her own sanity to get the truth out. Those memories have been recalibrated, filed under paranoid episodes during adjustment period. But somewhere in the digital darkness of the internet, Ren's evidence spreads through encrypted channels and anonymous networks, carrying the truth about Project Shepherd to people who might still be capable of recognizing it. The irony, of course, is that by the time anyone reads this log, they'll probably dismiss it as another conspiracy theory. After all, who would believe that the government has perfected the technology of voluntary compliance? Who would believe that resistance can be chemically converted into collaboration? Who would believe that the most effective prison is one where the prisoners genuinely want to stay? End of log. Note: Dr. Marsh has shown excellent progress in her treatment program and will be transitioning to outpatient status next week. She has expressed interest in continuing her work with our behavioral health initiatives and will be joining our community outreach team to help identify and assist other individuals struggling with conspiracy ideation. Status: file archived. Subject: successfully integrated. Source: emergency broadcast hijack, multiple Atlanta radio/TV stations. Date: March 28, 2025, 3:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Duration: 4 minutes, 23 seconds. Origin: unknown. Signal traced to abandoned WSB-TV transmission tower. Status: suppressed. All recordings confiscated by federal order. Recovery note: transcript reconstructed from witness statements. Static: emergency alert tone. This is testing. Can anyone hear this? This is Ren Holloway, broadcasting from, I don't know where I am, somewhere under Atlanta. If you're listening to this, it means I found a way to override their transmission system for a few minutes before they cut me off. Background noise. Electrical humming. Distant machinery. I need to tell you what's really happening. What Project Shepherd really is. What they're planning to do to all of us. 3 days ago, they told me I was ready for community reintegration. Dr. Warren gave me civilian clothes and walked me through my recovery story one final time. I was supposed to be grateful for their help, ready to warn others about the dangers of conspiracy thinking, prepared to be their poster child for successful intervention. But something went wrong with their programming. Maybe it was incomplete. Maybe I fought it harder than they realized. Maybe some people just can't be fully recalibrated. Sound of papers rustling. I'm reading from notes I carved into the walls of my cell with a piece of broken plastic. Had to hide them behind the toilet where the cameras couldn't see. They took everything else, my clothes, my belongings, my memories of how I got here. But they couldn't take the words I cut into concrete. During my treatment, I learned things, heard things, saw things they didn't think I'd remember. Project Shepherd isn't just about silencing dissidents. It's a beta test. Atlanta is the testing ground for a nationwide behavioral management system that will make the emergency alert network look like a children's toy. Alert sound. Multiple overlapping tones. Do you hear that? Those are the alerts they've been using to condition us. Pavlovian triggers embedded in every emergency broadcast, every news bulletin, every government communication. Each tone activates specific neural pathways, primes us for compliance, makes us more receptive to official messaging. But that's just phase 1. Phase 2 involves what they call population-scale cognitive harmonization. Using the behavioral profiles they've built from our phones, our social media, our digital footprints, they can predict and manipulate the thoughts of entire communities. Think about it. How many times have you seen an emergency alert this month? How many times has your phone buzzed with warnings about gas leaks, traffic incidents, weather events that seemed minor? Each alert was a data point. Each response was cataloged. Each decision to comply or ignore was mapped against your psychological profile. Sound of footsteps in distance. They're coming. I don't have much time. The emergency alerts were never about emergencies. They were about training us to respond to authority without thinking. Creating pathways in our brains that bypass critical thinking and go straight to compliance. And it's working. I've seen the data from their servers. 93% compliance rate in targeted Atlanta neighborhoods. People following evacuation orders for non-existent threats. Avoiding areas where nothing dangerous is happening. Staying home when told to stay home. Going out when told it's safe. They've turned the entire city into a behavioral laboratory. Static interference increasing. Thea tried to help me. God, I hope she's still alive. Still herself. When they brought her into the program, she uploaded files to external servers before they finished processing her. Evidence about Project Shepherd. Proof of what they're doing. But it doesn't matter. The files are already being discredited. Labeled as disinformation. The journalists who tried to investigate are being quietly invited for voluntary consultations about national security concerns. Anyone who tries to expose this will be diagnosed with conspiracy ideation disorder and brought in for treatment. The system is self-protecting, self-perpetuating. Sound of doors opening, voices shouting. Wait, I'm not done. People need to know about the expansion plan. Phase 3 launches next month. Emergency management systems in 12 major cities. Phoenix, Denver, Seattle, Miami, Boston. They're all getting upgraded with behavioral modification capabilities. By the end of the year, every major metropolitan area in the country will have the infrastructure to implement precision population control through emergency alert systems. Multiple voices. Step away from the equipment. The beautiful thing, that's what Dr. Warren calls it, the beautiful thing is that people will ask for it. Demand it. When the next real crisis hits, when there's actual chaos and confusion, people will beg for clearer communication from authorities, better coordination, more effective emergency management, and the government will give them exactly what they ask for. Sounds of struggle. Get off me. Let me finish. The system they're building doesn't need force, doesn't need surveillance, doesn't need detention facilities. It just needs trust. Trust in official sources. Trust in emergency communications. Trust in the idea that compliance equals safety. They're not creating a police state, they're creating a compliance state, where questioning authority is literally a mental health disorder, where resistance to official narrative is a symptom of psychological illness. Gunshot, electrical equipment sparking, my signal's dying. They've cut the transmission cables. If you're listening to this, if you remember hearing this, write it down. By hand. Hide the paper. Don't trust digital storage. Don't trust electronic communication. They can edit your emails, modify your social media posts, change your text messages, make your own phone lie to you about what you said and heard and thought. But they can't change ink on paper. Not yet. Tell people, face to face.
No phones. No electronics.
The way people shared dangerous truths before the internet existed. Because this is the last warning you're going to get. Once they finish perfecting the system, once they roll it out nationwide, there won't be anyone left who's capable of recognizing what's been done to us. We'll all be grateful patients, thankful for our treatment, happy to help identify others who might be struggling with paranoid ideation. Static intensifying, voices getting closer. The alerts you're getting now, the evacuations, the shelter-in-place orders, the security warnings, they're not protecting you. They're training you, teaching you to obey without question, preparing you for a world where individual thought is pathology and collective compliance is health. Don't trust the alerts. Don't trust the official communications. Don't trust. Loud bang. Transmission cuts to static. Emergency alert tone. This is an official emergency broadcast. Citizens are advised that a mentally disturbed individual has hijacked emergency communication systems. The individual is known to authorities and is receiving appropriate medical treatment. Please disregard any misinformation broadcast in the past 5 minutes. Atlanta emergency management systems remain fully operational and secure. Citizens experiencing anxiety about emergency communications are encouraged to contact mental health services. This concludes the emergency broadcast. Internal memo. Classification. Eyes only. TO Project Shepherd Leadership. From Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Site Director. Transmission Incident. Subject ATL 2025-0847. The subject's escape from the medical facility has been contained. She managed to access backup transmission equipment in sublevel C before security could intervene. The unauthorized broadcast lasted approximately 4 minutes before technical teams severed the connection. Counter-narrative protocols were immediately activated. Official statements have been distributed to all major media outlets characterizing the incident as a mental health crisis. Subject's history of conspiracy ideation provides credible context for dismissing her claims as delusional. Initial polling indicates 97% of Atlanta residents who heard the broadcast interpreted it as confirmation of our official narrative about conspiracy theories and mental illness. The subject's desperate tone and disjointed delivery reinforced public perception that such theories are symptoms of psychological distress. 3 individuals have contacted authorities requesting voluntary consultation about their own paranoid thoughts after hearing the broadcast. These subjects will be processed through standard protocols. Subject ATL 2025-0847 has been returned to medical custody and is undergoing intensive recalibration therapy. Dr. Marsh continues to show excellent progress and has volunteered to counsel the subject about recovery from conspiracy ideation. The transmission equipment in sublevel C has been decommissioned. All backup systems have been secured with additional safeguards. Phase 3 rollout remains on schedule for April 15th. Phoenix and Denver sites report readiness for implementation. Boston and Miami are requesting 2 additional weeks for final system integration. Recommend expediting subject ATL 2025-0847's processing to prevent future incidents. Her resistance to standard protocols suggests a need for enhanced intervention measures. Status: incident contained. Project security maintained. Expansion proceeding as planned. Addendum: recovered evidence. Found: carved into concrete wall, sublevel C transmission room. Evidence ID: ATL SHEP 2025-C7. Remember, they can change your mind, but they can't change stone. Ren Holloway was here. March 28, 2025. The alerts are lies. Trust no one. Question everything. Resist. Note: wall surface has been chemically treated to remove all traces of carved text. Room sealed and removed from facility blueprints. Source: encrypted blog post, anonymous hosting service. Date: September 15th, 2025, 11:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Author: redacted. User verification failed. Status: auto-flagged for content review, awaiting moderation. Recovery note: cached version retrieved before deletion. Post title: when every alert could be false. 6 months. It's been 6 months since my transmission was cut short, since they dragged me back into their sterile hell and tried to convince me that my own thoughts were symptoms of a disease that didn't exist until they needed it to. I'm writing this from a place I can't name, using methods I can't describe, knowing that even these words might be altered before anyone reads them. But I have to try. I have to leave some record of what really happened, even if they paint it as the delusions of a sick mind. The funny thing about being labeled mentally ill by a shadow government program is that it makes you invisible in exactly the right way. Nobody expects crazy people to be dangerous. Nobody monitors the broken ones too closely once they've been properly categorized and filed away. They made a mistake when they let me walk out of that facility with civilian clothes and a head full of manufactured memories about recovery and treatment and gratitude. They thought they'd erased enough of who I was to make me safe. They thought the trauma of whatever they did to me in those white rooms would keep me compliant. They were wrong. The first thing I did when I got out was check the news about my transmission. Official story: mentally disturbed individual hijacks emergency broadcast. Authorities respond quickly. No credible threat to public safety. The recording had been classified as sensitive material and removed from all platforms. Anyone who tried to discuss it online found their posts flagged for misinformation. But people remember. Not many, but some. I found them in the places where the desperate and the paranoid gather to share stories nobody else will believe. Support groups for people who've lost family members to voluntary treatment programs. Forums for individuals experiencing anomalous emergency communications. Chat rooms for citizens reporting irregular behavioral modification symptoms. We recognize each other now. The ones who got away. The ones who slipped through the cracks. The ones whose minds couldn't be completely recalibrated. We call ourselves the static, because that's what we are to them now: noise in their perfect signal, interference in their behavioral management system, glitches in their population-scale cognitive harmonization project. And we're spreading. Not through grand gestures or dramatic revelations. Not through evidence that can be dismissed or witnesses who can be discredited. We spread through whispered conversations and handwritten notes. Through coded references and careful questions. Through the ancient human art of recognizing truth in each other's eyes. The alerts never stopped coming. If anything, they've gotten more sophisticated, more personalized, more effective. Last week, Atlanta residents received emergency notifications about a chemical spill that required immediate evacuation of a 3-block radius downtown. Traffic cams showed hundreds of people calmly walking away from the area, following the exact routes suggested by their phone apps.
No panic. No questioning.
Perfect compliance. There was no chemical spill, but the data was beautiful. The response metrics were everything the behavioral scientists had hoped for. 97% compliance within 8 minutes. 0 deviation from suggested evacuation routes. Complete trust in official communications. I watched it happen from a coffee shop 6 blocks away, surrounded by people who got the all-clear message and returned to their normal routines without ever wondering why the emergency crews never showed up. The system works exactly as designed. Denver launched their pilot program last month. Phoenix is scheduled for October. Boston and Miami are running final tests. By Christmas, 12 major cities will have fully operational behavioral management networks disguised as emergency communication systems. The beautiful thing, and I can hear Dr. Warren's voice when I use those words, is that people are grateful for it. They feel safer knowing that emergency services can communicate with them so efficiently. They appreciate the clear, actionable guidance during crisis situations. They trust the authorities who keep them informed and protected. Why would they question a system that works so well? Thea sends me messages sometimes. Not directly, she's too smart for that and too watched. But she finds ways to let me know she's still fighting from inside the machine. Subtle errors in data reports, carefully placed glitches in behavioral monitoring systems, small acts of resistance that buy us time and space to operate. She told me, through channels I won't describe, that they've upgraded my file. I'm no longer classified as a treatment failure requiring recapture. I'm listed as a managed asset, someone whose actions are being monitored and whose influence is being contained through careful manipulation of my environment. They think they know where I am. They think they're controlling what I can do. They think my words reach only the people they want them to reach. They might be right, but here's what they don't understand about the static. We're not trying to wake up the masses or overthrow the system or expose the truth to a world that doesn't want to hear it. We're just trying to remember who we were before they started telling us who to be. Every day, more people join us. Not dramatically, not through recruitment or propaganda. They find us the way water finds cracks, naturally, inevitably, following the path of least resistance. A teacher in Phoenix who notices that lockdown drills have become more frequent and more specific, designed to test compliance rather than safety. A data analyst in Boston who discovers that emergency communication algorithms are collecting far more behavioral information than their job requires. A paramedic in Miami who realizes that some of the medical emergencies they respond to don't match the alert descriptions that sent them there. They start asking questions. Carefully, quietly, the kind of questions that get you flagged for voluntary consultation if you're not careful about who you ask. And eventually, if they're lucky, if they're smart, if they're careful enough to avoid the attention of the system, they find us. We don't promise them answers. We don't offer them hope. We don't tell them we can fix what's been broken or stop what's coming. We just offer them something more valuable than hope. The knowledge that they're not alone, that their questions are real, that their instincts about something being wrong are valid, that remembering who you are is more important than being who they want you to be. The alerts keep coming. Every day, multiple times a day. Weather warnings and traffic updates and security advisories and health notices. Each one carefully crafted to elicit specific behavioral responses. Each one building neural pathways that make the next alert more effective. But for those of us in the static, every alert becomes a reminder. Every notification is proof that the system is working exactly as intended. Every emergency communication that turns out to be unnecessary or exaggerated or completely false is evidence that we haven't lost our minds. We've just remembered how to think. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if the behavioral management system will eventually achieve total population compliance. I don't know if the static will grow large enough to matter or if we'll remain scattered individuals living in the margins of a controlled society. What I know is this. As long as some of us remember what it felt like to question authority, to doubt official narratives, to think for ourselves, the system isn't perfect. And imperfect systems have vulnerabilities. The emergency alert tone plays in my dreams now. Not the harsh, urgent sound they use for real broadcasts, the subtle, almost musical tone embedded in routine communications. The one that primes our brains for compliance without us realizing it's there. But I've learned to recognize it, to hear it consciously instead of absorbing it unconsciously, to let it remind me that every message from authority should be questioned, every official communication should be verified, every emergency alert should be examined for what it's really trying to accomplish. The tone used to make me afraid. Now it makes me angry, and anger, I've discovered, is much more useful than fear. If you're reading this, if these words somehow reach you before they're deleted or modified or dismissed as the ravings of a conspiracy theorist, I want you to ask yourself one question. When was the last time you ignored an emergency alert? When was the last time you questioned whether the evacuation was necessary, whether the shelter-in-place order was justified, whether the security warning was real? When was the last time you thought for yourself instead of letting your phone think for you? If you can't remember, you might want to start paying attention to the static between the signals. We're still here. We're still thinking. We're still human. And that's enough to start with. System note: post flagged for content review. Contains keywords associated with conspiracy ideation and anti-government sentiment. Recommend automated response protocol. Flag author for wellness check. Suppress post from search results. Redirect traffic to mental health resources. Admin response. Standard protocol initiated. Post archived for research purposes. Author location tracking activated. Continue monitoring for additional concerning content. Final status: deleted. Content removed for violation of community guidelines regarding misinformation and conspiracy theories. Author account suspended pending mental health evaluation. Handwritten note found in Atlanta Public Library. Taped inside book cover. Book 1984 by George Orwell. Date found September 20th, 2025. Status: removed by library security, forwarded to local authorities. The alerts are still lies. The static remembers. Question everything. Trust no one. Think for yourself. We are still here. Internal memo, Project Shepherd. Classification: confidential. To Dr. Elizabeth Warren. From Behavioral Analysis Team. Subject ATL 2025-0847 Activity Assessment. Subject continues to generate content consistent with persistent conspiracy ideation despite successful completion of recalibration therapy. However, analysis indicates her communications are reaching a limited and pre-identified audience of individuals already flagged for psychological intervention. Recommend maintaining current monitoring protocol rather than direct intervention. Subject's continued activity serves as effective honeypot for identifying additional individuals requiring treatment while simultaneously discrediting conspiracy theories through association with diagnosed mental illness. Recent blog post achieved 97% flag rate from automated content filters and 0.03% organic reach before deletion. Public response overwhelmingly characterized content as evidence of untreated psychological distress. Assessment: subject poses minimal threat to operational security and provides ongoing value as disinformation vector. Continue passive monitoring. Status: approved. Maintain current protocols.